Hello viewers, the Gran Turismo World Series has returned and this is the first round, the Nations Cup at Spa. This is going to be a really interesting race. We're going to jump in and you can see there 24 laps of Spa. This is pretty much going to be an endurance race and this is something you don't really see on Gran Turismo a huge amount. So taking a quick look at the best cars for this race, it looks as though the Supra and the Nismo, the GTR 2018, are the two strongest cars. I'm personally going to go for the 2018 Nismo. Okay, let's jump into the first qualifying session. 6 minutes on the clock. You don't get a huge amount of time to get a lap on the board in these sessions. And around Spa, only 2 laps to get the job done. So into the first corner on the first lap, braking definitely a little bit too late here, carrying way too much speed in and missing the apex by approximately 5 miles, which was definitely suboptimal. A little bit later on in the lap, it got a little bit scruffier here. You can see just taking way too much grass on the inside. Couldn't get on the power as early as I would have liked as a result. And at the end, it meant a lap time of 2:17.9, but I would have to really get towards the lower end of the 17s. You see here, lap 2, getting a bit close to the apex. Perhaps still not taking the perfect line, but better than the first lap. That's the main thing. And then through Pouon, turning in a bit later, able to get on the power a bit more nicely and powering round towards the end of the second sector, where we get a split improvement of 8/10. So just need to carry this through to the end of the lap and I should be into the low 17s, which would be great. So a bit of a distraction here from the guy in front who slowed down, but it was going to be quite a big improvement, and with that I was fairly happy. That second lap was a lot better, up to P4, P5. So we've got 2 Supras in front. That'll be interesting at the start because I think they'll get a really good launch at the end of the Camel Straight. And here we are then, the grid for the 2023 Belgian Grand Prix. Oh god, that's Super GT in P5. Anyway, Murray Walker impressions aside, let's jump into the start of the race. Away we go, P5 on the grid, 24 laps ahead of us. And through turn 1, we have the 2 Supras in front. As I mentioned, I felt like this was going to be a very interesting dynamic in this race between the Nissan GTRs and the Supras, both with different characteristics in this race. The Supras both very quick in a straight line. For example, here on the Camel Straight, and the Nissan GTR very good through the corners, especially the long corners in the middle sector, which we are coming into now. So for the first lap, you see we're quite spread out at the start, and therefore it was just a case of trying to pull up as close as we can to the Supras and just see what they're all about. It didn't take long to actually get one position because this guy turned left on a straight and said hello to Barry Art. So that was a very easy position, but it wouldn't take long before I'd gain another one. Because this guy also turned left on a straight and I went up the inside and took P3. So that was a lot easier than I could have really hoped for, moving up from 5th all the way to 3rd on the first lap. I think that Supra's on hard tyres. I really need to get away from it because it's going to come back at me on this straight, but also into the Camel Straight on the next lap. So this sector needs to be good. Oh, they made contact behind. That is good news for me. So with that contact, I was able then to avert my eyes forward instead of backwards and just really focus on catching up with the 2 leaders who by now were 3 and 2 seconds ahead. Let's take a look. 3.4 to the leader, 2.4 to second. So quite a bit of a gap, not in the slipstream anymore. This is lap 8, so after putting in a fair amount of consistent laps, mostly in the mid to high 217s, I wasn't really gaining. But there was a change for the lead, quite interestingly, the Italian dropping down, who looked really strong at the start. Then 1 lap later, lap 9, the Italian decided, you know what, don't really fancy this race anymore. I'm going to say goodbye and hand me a position. So thank you for that. And now Lap 10, the gap was 3.8 to the leader, who you can see just went into the pit lane at the end of lap 10 on the medium tyres. I'm also on the mediums. And by the lap 11, my tyres were absolutely done, so I had to come in. And so over to the hard tyre. I feel as though I left it perhaps one lap too late to go in. My lap time on lap 10 and 11 was a bit slow. And you can see there the gap to Jensen, who was the original leader, going up to just over 4 seconds, so I lost about a second, I would say. And in the second stint, I just wasn't able to keep up. The guy was just way too quick on the hard tyre. The gap was 11 seconds at the end, but it was going to be a solid P2. Oh my goodness, that is exhausting. 56 minutes for me. Second place. The guy in the lead, he was really good on the hard tyre. I just couldn't keep up at all. I could match him on the medium. It was a good race. 273 points there for second, which isn't too bad for me. I've only got over 300 a few times, but I think I can do better. I was so much slower on the hard tyre. On the medium I was fine, but if we... Yes, I was only able to get into the 18s once on the hard tyre. This guy who won did an 18 pretty much every lap, or most of the laps. So he's carrying a lot more speed through that corner. I think what I was doing during the race, I was watching the time gap through certain corners, and through there he was definitely quicker. There we go. It was a really tidy lap, and that's what did it. He was really good on that tyre. I'm going to jump back in. Even though I got a good amount of points there, I think I could still perform better, so let's see. Okay, here we go. For the second attempt, we can try and do one better here and try and go for the win. And of course, having now done the race and the qualifying, I'm a bit more experienced. I know the track a bit better. And after looking at the replay and learning where I was going wrong, I should theoretically be a bit quicker. And so on this qualifying lap, just working out exactly where I can carry more speed, especially through this corner here, this right-hander, where I think I was just not carrying enough speed on the previous race, or the previous qualifying in fact. Now in the previous qualifying I set a 2:17.1, and so we really ideally need to get towards that kind of pace again. On this first lap, a 2:17.3, so it's a good start I guess, but I definitely need to improve. 1/10 down on lap number 2, so that's not a good sign, but if we can just get this middle sector good, then there's definitely room for improvement. I think the 2:17.3 is solid, but can definitely go quicker. Into Puon, late turn in to really get that rotation, get on the power all the way down this hill. I think that was a good corner. Let's take a look at the end of split number 2. It's going to be nearly 0.2 of an improvement, and we are on for a purple lap here, but unfortunately I did this. Went slightly beyond the track limit, a couple of pixels. Before you know it, it's going to be an invalidated lap, and unfortunately it was going to be quicker. You see it as I pause it, 1/4 of a second, but it's not going to count, which is very frustrating. Oh my god, that was close. Rory there in second. Got some people coming in here really close at the front. Look at this, 0.2 in the top 5. Oh no, a couple of Supras now go to the front, so down to P4, down to P5. This time we got the Supras at the front, and I'm not going to expect them to spin off this time, so I think there's definitely more intrigue in this race, there's no doubt about that. 0.3 in the top 7, 0.4 in the top 8, 0.4 in the top 9. So this race was undoubtedly going to be a bit closer, with the top 9 spread by only 0.4. And so I really needed to make sure that I was going to be on the front foot. I was on the hard tyre, which would make the start of the race perhaps a bit harder, but I needed to make sure I didn't drop down too much, and ideally try and stick in the slipstream with these cars in front. I do not know at this point who is on the medium or who is on the hard tyre. Obviously the medium tyre runners would probably pull away, but it's my job to try to minimise the time loss, try to stay with them as much as possible. And also on this attempt I was much more conscious of the fuel saving, as the driver who won the previous race was doing a much better job than me at saving fuel, and would have saved a couple of seconds in the pit lane. And so that was something I was just going to take half a look at from time to time. So lap number 1 here, you can see the guys in front pulling away slightly. That was mainly because of my poor line at the end of the Kemmel Straight, braking a bit too late on the colder tyres. But as we go through this section, we're going to get mixed up with a Supra there in 4th, 2 Supras at the front, Sir Lewis just in front there having a big moment on the exit as we head down the hill towards Pouhon for the first time. 24 laps once again, of course, and the previous race taking 56 minutes. A very long race indeed, and the second time around here going to take it out of you. So let's try and keep the concentration levels high. It's very easy to make one mistake, but the really good thing about these endurance races is, well, like that, you do not want to be making those mistakes, as that guy has done already, turning left on the straight and going straight into barrier. So that's going to be P5. That is not bad at all. Heading up the straight here at the end of lap number 1. We're going to fast forward to the beginning of lap number 2. So we're keeping in touch with this group. We're just trying to gauge who's on what tyre. Not really under any significant pressure from behind, so that's good. It seems as though, at least at this point, that most people are on the harder tyre. Starting on that hard tyre, moving over to the medium. There was a bit of a change there for 3rd place. The Saudi driver in the Supra going up to 2nd. And then I began to realise at the end of lap 2 that these guys were just beginning to fight, and I felt as though the guy in 3rd was perhaps a little bit off the pace, a tiny bit. But if he could settle into a rhythm, then there's a chance for that to change. So getting very close behind these guys. It gave me a bit of a chance to fuel save slightly, which is always a bonus. And as we move forward here to lap number 3, I wasn't quite close enough. My exit out of the source was never quite good enough. So I was never really close enough to challenge into the Kemmel Straight, or at the end of the Kemmel Straight here. Eventually Sir Lewis went for the move, went way too deep. Luckily I was able to scoot around the outside and move up into P4 without really losing any time. So that was quite a good move. And then it looks as though the Alpha behind the Swiss driver able to get past as well. I think Sir Lewis would have got dirty tyres from that moment, and certainly would have had to recover for at least a couple of corners before those tyres would have cleaned up. So that's a good start to lap number 3. Lap number 4, you can see I was getting a bit closer to this guy, certainly pulling up towards him a bit closer than I was on the previous lap. Just fuel saving on the straight, and again a bit closer, and deciding if I'm not close enough to fully go for this move, I may as well fuel save and wait until I get the proper opportunity to fully send up the inside. It's really a race of minimising time loss. I don't want to go for a stupid move that costs us both a second or 2 seconds. And with the guy behind getting a bit closer, Sir Lewis looked like he had good pace here. I definitely got right on the back end here of 3rd place, and this was going to be my best opportunity to go for this overtake. As we head down the hill, this is a good sort of gap to have as you head into Radion and Eau Rouge. Flat out through here, got to watch out for the slipstream as you go through that corner. It can make you wash wide slightly. But now, revving up to 6th gear, heading over 160 miles an hour down the straight, pulling out to the right hand side. He's not going to defend it. That's probably a good idea, to be honest. Let's not waste any time battling, because it's such a long race. There really is no need to fight this early on. You may as well work together and try to minimise the loss of time, as I've mentioned. So that was a good start to lap number 6. The gap to the guy in front, 3.3, 3.4. Gap to the leader, 7.8. And it looked as though the Saudi driver was on the medium tyre, so we'd expect that guy to pull away. But to the Supra in front, he was definitely on the hard. Now, Sir Lewis was getting very close, and here I thought he was going to go for the move, but he didn't. And as I was just saying about saving time, that was probably a smart decision. He wasn't quite close enough to fully go for that move, and so I think he was quite happy to sit behind, save a bit of fuel, and work together with me to try to edge closer to this Spaniard. And I think we were, not by much, but this was the beauty of the endurance race, you know. Just over the course of many laps, just try to churn away a couple of tenths per lap. The gap now down to 2.5. So we've gained maybe 0.8 of a second over the course of a couple of laps. It definitely takes a couple of laps to do it. So eventually the Saudi driver in the lead goes into the pit lane with the medium tyres on to change over to the hard. And now we therefore take over P2, at least temporarily, before our pit stop. And we'd be thinking quite soon about coming in. It was through this middle sector where I was definitely quicker than the Supra, as I touched upon earlier. Supra really good in a straight line, which is good in Sector 3 and Sector 1. But then this car really strong in Sector 2. And Sector 2 is pretty long, lots of corners here. And therefore I was just able to pull a couple of tenths in that middle sector every lap. And then he would gain them back in Sector 1 and 3. Overall, I think I was gaining slightly. You see the gap now down to 1.2. And I was really enjoying this endurance aspect, just trying to be consistent over a long period of time. And it was certainly paying dividends on this occasion. We were getting to the point now where I was just edging into the slipstream. If I could just get a bit closer, then I was going to really feel the full benefit of that slipstream. And so this race was looking very promising. We still have to consider the Saudi driver. 0.7 the gap now to the Supra, and this is good because I'm being helped along the straights by the car which is the fastest on the straights. And so in terms of time gained for the whole race, this is really good. This is positive news, and it's a good place to be. And as we head into the chicane, this is going to be halfway into the race. You see how much time we gain on the brakes. I think the GTR with much better brakes compared to the Supra. And the tide is turning slowly in my favour. We've still got Sir Lewis just behind in close company, so we still have to consider that we may have to defend as well as attack here as we approach the time where we need to start pitting. In fact, the guys behind, a lot of the hard tyre runners have just pitted, and so I was thinking to myself, this is probably it. This is probably the time where I need to start thinking about coming in. And almost going wide there in the wash of the car in front. Luckily not doing so. Luckily not getting a penalty. But in the first race, I did 11 laps on the medium. If I pit now, I'm also going to do 11 laps on the medium. But the difference is you'll be doing the second half of the race where you have a lighter car, and therefore it should be a bit better on the tyres. And so I decided I should probably come in at the end of this lap. I don't really want to be undercut by any of those guys behind who just went in. And so my main strategy at this point was really just to try to close up as much as possible to the back of this Supra in the lead. So this race was really spicing up. We are now half an hour into this race. A little bit slow through Pouhon, but it's amazing when you can have an amazing battle with someone where you're both clearly quite well matched, and it goes on over a long time frame. And this is why endurance racing, it can be so good when it really works out. Obviously, if you're in a boring race and you're on your own, or you get hit wide and then you're at the back, it can get very frustrating and it can get very boring. But when it does work out, my goodness, it really does feel good. So up the final sector, end of lap 13, the end of this first stint. Going to peel over to the right hand side. Is he going to go in as well? Yes, he is. Interesting news. Okay, let's see if the Nissan boys can do a good pit stop for us. Oh man, that was close. Right, on to the medium. I think fuel saving was alright. Same as the guy in front. The guy behind actually has a bit less. I thought he'd do a better job because he was in my toe for so long. We're still going to have to hunt down the Saudi driver in the Supra, but he is on the hard tyres now. Right, come on. Come on, Nissan team. Get those tyres on. Right. We need 10 laps of fuel. We go a little bit over so we can rev this car out now. We're still behind this guy. That's okay. Alright, here we go then. Now this was a really good opportunity to try to get past this Supra, but as we spoke about earlier, the differences in top speed between the two cars is such that the Supra is so good in a straight line, and even fully in the slipstream, I'm barely able to catch up. In fact, at this moment the Supra is pulling away, helped somewhat by the toe of the car in front. And this would be a very interesting moment here, because we have this car in front in P4. This was the guy who spun off on lap 1 and is on an alternative strategy, or slightly off compared to all of us. But here, the Spaniard is able to get underneath on the way out and gain the position. And I'm going to have to wait an extra corner here, try to get the move done on the exit. Luckily enough, I am able to do that, albeit with a bit of time lost. But from here, it was quite clear what my strategy was going to have to be for the next couple of laps. Well, I really need to stay in the toe of this Supra. I can't let him get away. We are 6.7 off the lead. This is really doable here. The win is possible. I'm just going to have to stay in the toe, work together with this guy. We'll eventually catch up with that Saudi driver. It'll take a few laps, but we can get there. And so for the next couple of laps, I decided I'm just going to sit in the toe of this guy, try to work with him to reel in the Saudi driver. I think it's more of a guaranteed position to try to catch someone who's on a worse tyre and try to overtake them. And at this point, you can see another back marker who we're both catching up to, and he would gain up this straight because of the slipstream, but look how much we gain on the brakes here. So this definitely helped me out. This Ferrari driver who came into the pit lane helped me out big time catching up. Oh, that back marker helped me out big time. And we gained a little bit on the leader there, maybe half a second. I need to get into the low. I need to get into the lower 17s here. But it's going to be hard to overtake this Supra because it's so quick in a straight line. Let's give it a go. This is probably my best shot. If there was a chance to do it, it would have to be now, because this was about as close as I'd ever been, and the guy in front did not have any benefit of slipstream from in front. So let's see if we can do it. As we max out here at 165, 166, 7 miles an hour. Not enough to get onto the back of this guy. This is going to be a problem. So trying to overtake this thing. Definitely going to be an issue for this race. This guy would have to make a mistake, but he was driving so well, he wasn't doing anything drastically wrong. And so trying to get past him would definitely prove to be a difficult task. But looking into the near distance, we were definitely gaining on the Saudi driver. 1.6 gained on the leader there. But this guy in the Supra, he's driving really well. I can tell he's good. He's very clean. And I'm not sure how I'm going to go about trying to win this one. And so whilst hypothesizing about how I would try to overtake both of these cars, we actually gained on the Saudi driver, as you can see. The gap now 1.5 seconds from first to third where I am. And this would get very interesting whether or not the leader would put up a resistance and try to block us or let us go. Let's see what he does here. Is he going to defend it? Didn't defend it. He's gonna let me go. Okay. Still on this guy. Come on, battle for the win. And so after all of that, it came down to a 2-horse race for the lead. And I was slightly short on fuel. Earlier on I said I needed 10 laps of fuel. I actually needed 11. I did put in 11. That wasn't an issue, but I haven't really been fuel saving this second stint. I've been driving so hard trying to keep up with this guy that I was actually slightly short. And therefore, over the next 6 laps, or slightly less than 6 laps now, I would have to take some measures to save some fuel. Now, of course, in the slipstream, that does make it slightly easier. And also, I do not know how much fuel this guy has in his car. And so these are all questions I'm asking myself as we lap here. Lap 21, I began to drop a bit more severely as I still was not anywhere near my target of saving enough fuel. And so I had to take slightly more drastic measures in order to have a chance of actually finishing the race. This was the end of lap number 23, going on to the final lap of the race. I did have 1 lap of fuel remaining, so I should make it to the end, so that shouldn't be an issue anymore. I have done enough. You can see the gap is 1.1. He is somewhat comfortable there in first place. Am I able to get back in? Will he run out of fuel? Will I run out of fuel? As we get to the end, my fuel trickles over to 0, and unfortunately I'd have to call off the pursuit of the race win and settle for a very close and a very hard fought second. And a massive well done to that Spaniard who drove really well throughout the course of this entire race. Oh man, what a race. 56 minutes, second place in the end. I just couldn't quite keep up with that guy because of the fuel. He drove really well, and it would have been really hard to overtake him in the Supra. And then even if I did, try to keep him behind as well. He drove really well, and I think he deserved that. So 276 points for that one. I got like 3 points more than the first one, so I guess it was worth going again. Okay, I didn't enter the third race. I kept my points from the second race. So we can take a look at the points totals now. As such, first in Kent, 14th in the UK, 73rd in the region, Europe, Middle East and Africa. 276, just one behind Rory. He had a really good round there. And who's winning at the moment? Coyote, 422. Looking at these totals, I think I need to be in a lobby where the top score, let's say for first, second, is over 300. So I think I need to improve my driver rating for the later rounds. And just looking back at round one here, I think the endurance aspect was really good. I really enjoyed a short quali, so you get to do maybe 1 or 2 laps. In this instance, it was 2 laps. And then you have to perform in the race. Lots of consistency. You have to stay in the race, not make mistakes over a longer time frame. I really enjoyed it. I think there should be more of this. And, you know, there's always been this floated idea within the community of having a daily race D with live qualifying and a longer race, and I think that proved that it can work. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on this video, on the format as well. But just before we go, the FANATEC DD Pro is back in stock, so take a look in the description if you want to get your hands on one. I'm also doing a competition for one, so you could win this. But thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Goodbye.